Tonight on our news live at 7, a man on a moped gunned down late Thursday night. Police say they need your help finding the suspects. Plus, the driver in the deadly 2018 Labor Day crash is sentenced in the Supreme Court. All the details from inside the courtroom are straight ahead. And a former attorney general explaining why legislation against marital rape is fundamental. Then in our news at 7:30, the head of the local organizing committee for the Carifta Games defends the amount of money being spent to get game ready.
The minister's correct. I am correct. And so the numbers are, any accountant will understand.
Our news live at 7 starts now. Welcome to our news live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Candino Knowles. A man who killed 4 people and wounded 8 others in a tragic crash during the 2018 Labor Day parade has been jailed for 12 months. 27-year-old Travis Sawyer was sentenced today when he appeared before Supreme Court Justice Gregory Hilton. We'll get to all the details from today's court proceedings in about 2 minutes, but now to a murder last night in the Golden Gates community where police revealing shot spotter technology alerted them to gunshots that claimed the life of yet another man. Our Talia Hall was on the scene.
Police say a man in his mid-20s was driving a moped west on St. Bart's Road when the occupants of a small dark-colored vehicle pulled alongside him and shot him multiple times. Press liaison officer Chief Superintendent Christine Skipping speaking to reporters on the scene.
We are appealing to members of the community, especially those persons who reside in this area, persons who may have been traversing the Carmichael Road area, who may have seen a small dark-colored vehicle leave this area at a high rate of speed. We are asking you to kindly reach out to the officers of the Criminal Investigations Department.
Now, police were not able to provide more information on the identity of the victim last night. Skippings was also asked about the murder count. Here was her response.
Every death is painful. Family members, when they lose a loved one, it's hard. And I don't want to put a number on somebody's life. Life is worth more than just a number.
Officer in charge of the Carmichael Road Police Station, Chief Superintendent Mark Barrett, speaking on initiatives to clamp down on crime, adding that it will not be tolerated.
We as officers will converge on respective communities, particularly within the Carmichael Division, and again, we address the concerns of the residents because we know that the concerns varies.
As it relates to the culprit or culprits responsible for the deadly crime, Chief Superintendent Skippings had this message.
In a short period of time, we will have them in custody. We will have them in custody. And so they may be on the loose for now, but I can assure you, we will get them in custody and we will do our part as an organization and we will put them before the courts.
Reporting for our news, I'm Atalia Hall.
All right, thanks, Natalia. Well, investigators on Grand Bahama are tonight investigating an early morning shooting at a home on Westchester Circle in Freeport. It was just before 2 a.m. Friday when a man who police say was the homeowner contacted them about hearing gunshots. Upon checking, the man told officers he found bullet holes in his home. Luckily, no one was injured in the incident. Investigators say they have no leads on suspects, but investigations are ongoing. And now to that case involving a man who was sentenced to 1 year in prison after he killed 4 people and wounded 8 others in a tragic crash during the 2018 Labor Day parade. Supreme Court Justice Gregory Hilton handing the sentence to 27-year-old Travis Sawyer, who pleaded guilty to 4 counts of manslaughter by negligence and 8 counts of negligently causing harm in the June 1st, 2018 incident last August. He was allowed to remain on bail pending sentencing. Sawyer's negligence caused the deaths of 41-year-old Tabitha Hay, 48-year-old Tammy Patrice Gibson, 51-year-old Kathleen Fernanda, and 55-year-old Diana Gray Ferguson. Sawyer, who was on the parade with his mother, got out of the Ford F-150 truck he was driving on East Street and started dancing in the street. The unmanned vehicle rolled down the hill and plowed into the crowd, even as Sawyer tried to regain control of the truck. Following the crash, Sawyer helped in the rescue effort and broke down in tears after advising there were fatalities. He remained on the scene until he was arrested and taken to the Central Police Station. Meanwhile, police have added another armed robbery to their growing list of investigations. This time, police say a 42-year-old Sampson Street, Nassau Village resident was held up after 10 o'clock Thursday night. The victim was parked in his silver Nissan Note outside of a Nassau Village business when investigators say a knife-wielding robber approached him and stole the car. Officers showed up minutes after the incident and recovered the car a short distance away, but the suspect remains at large. Investigations are ongoing. And amid the ongoing debate over marital rape, former Attorney General Alison Maynard Gibson is responding to critics who say the church is too vocal on the matter. Maynard Gibson, who says she believes marital rape does exist, had this to say.
That I do note how, unfortunately, ministers of religion derailed the referendum process, and so these kinds of things can happen. But I don't cast blame, because at the end of the day, my relationship with God is between me and God. And so I have to decide whether I will support women having citizenship, having the right to pass on their citizenship, whether I will support the notion that there should be no marital rape in a marriage. Marriage doesn't contemplate, healthy marriage doesn't contemplate rape. That's me, it's my decision. I can't blame pastors for that.
Now, the issue of marital rape has dominated national headlines for quite some time now, with Prime Minister Philip Davis saying he believes rape is rape. Recently, Social Services State Minister Lisa Ramming said it's not a matter of if, but when marital rape laws will pass. Today, Gibson stressing the need for legislation.
I think that the necessary legislation, this is legislation. I hear people talking about, oh, we have this there, we have it there. It is so fundamental that it requires a systemic approach, and we need to have specific legislation that deals with it, how we will prosecute it, how we will punish it, and so forth, so that our society sends the strongest message about what we will tolerate in a civilized society, in a democracy.
All right, we've got much more to get to in a moment, but for now, it's time for your first look at temperatures. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is standing by in the Weather Center. Greg, this weekend, are we expecting a lot of rain?
No.
Okay.
Actually, the breeze is going to continue. As a matter of fact,
I checked my phone, and my phone was showing me rain, and but then when I looked
when I got in here this evening, we had a couple of little sprinkles on the windshield. Maybe a quick passing shower on the forecast, but no, nothing in terms of any significant rain. The breeze will continue, though.
Yeah, so. Good stuff.
Yeah, 77 degrees outside our studios right now in the partly cloudy skies, and it is breezy. Your winds out of the east at 16 miles per hour, and it feels like 76 degrees on the outside. Temperatures around the islands tonight: in Freeport it's 78, 77 in Marshall, Abaco, 78 also in Great Harbor Key, 80 in Alistown, Bimini, Nicholstown. You guys are 78, 77 over in Governor's Harbor with some clouds and some showers around. Here in the capital as well, we are at 77. 78 in Kemps Bay and Arthurstown, Cat Island. Georgetown, you guys have some showers nearby. 79, 79 in Edmonds Key, Long Island, 77 in Coburn Towns and Salvador. And where the front is actually falling apart, Southeast Bahamas, 80 degrees in Duncantown, Ragged Island, 79 in Colonel Hill, Cricket Island, Delectable Bay, 79 also in Abrahams Bay, 80 in Matthewtown, Inagua, and our very good neighbors to the southeast, Turks and Caicos Islands. You guys are 80 at this hour as well. Satellite view, well, how do we end March? Last day of March, high pressure in charge, and it's been breezy today with some patchy clouds moving across. We saw a couple of quick passing showers. We will continue to experience those breezy conditions. That front down there, the southeast Bahamas, is basically falling apart, but we expect another front to clip the northern Bahamas by Sunday. That's your quick check on weather. Stick with us. A look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Thanks, Greg. And still to come on our news, the hefty price tag the local organizing committee is defending for this year's Carifta Games. The LOC chief talks about what it takes to get game ready and how Grand Bahamians are taking action to restore mangroves. And later, digging into who is responsible for graveyard maintenance. That's coming up when our news returns. The head of the local organizing committee for the 50th Carifta Games is standing by the $9 million price tag he recently revealed. This after the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture issuing a statement saying the figure was incorrect. While the ministry is insisting $839 was the actual amount, $839,000, Maycock says he stands by what he said.
The numbers are the numbers. The numbers that I would have presented yesterday represented the capital works that I talked about that the LOC would have embarked on. Those capital works would have included legacy work that I said was like $2.5 million. Legacy work that would have happened within the stadium. Most of the legacy work were technical items.
All right, now stay tuned for more on that story. We've got a full report from our Marlena Leonard and Maycock's response to that Carifta confusion. It's coming up in our news at 7:30.
This segment of the news is brought to you by H.G. Christie. List your home in Grand Bahama with H.G. Christie. Visit our new office in the Port Lacaya Marketplace. H.G. Christie, celebrating over 100 years of service.
An ongoing mangrove restoration training taking place in Grand Bahama this week. It's a collaboration between Waterkeepers Bahamas and Mangrove Action Project. Executive Director at Waterkeepers Bahamas, Rashima Ingram, says mangrove managers who have been conducting restoration exercises in the Bahamas for the last 2 years are now extending their partnership to Bonefish Tarpon Trust.
One of the things that's really important is having done restoration, having done several plantings, each one of us, and then learning from the mistakes, and then coming back to the table, really talking about the ecology, talking about some of the things that we did right, some of the things that we need to tweak a little bit, and then really helping those community project leads to really understand the issues as well.
Bahamas Initiative Manager of Bonefish Tarpon Trust, Justin Lewis, says this time around they thought it important to make the training more comprehensive.
I think both BTT and Waterkeepers are doing a great job of spreading the message, but I think this is going to take it to the next level, whereas it's going to reach even more people, especially like what we're doing right now. People are going to see what we're doing. We're going to get everybody who's part of this workshop out on the water, and then they're going to talk about their experience with everybody else in the community. And again, like since it's such a wide variety group, it's going to reach a much wider variety of people around the Bahamas.
All right, well, the Ministry of Works and Utilities is responsible for the maintenance of countless government buildings and roads, but did you know they also maintain cemeteries? Well, tonight our Megan Shepard digs into this topic for today's Work in Progress segment.
Civil engineer in the Ministry of Works, Francis Clark, says the ministry is responsible for ensuring that the final resting place of thousands of residents is well maintained. The ministry works with private contractors to ensure all public cemeteries are maintained on a monthly basis.
What the contractors would do is that they would cut down any overgrown bushes, any tree stumps that are appearing, and cut the grass, keep the grass low, and rake up any debris.
However, there are cases when a cemetery will be in need of a major facelift, as was the case recently with the Western Cemetery.
And that is the repair of masonry components, walls, and sometimes some of the tombs and crypts. And so they would be repaired through a masonry contract and also painted.
There are 13 cemeteries currently being maintained by the Ministry of Works.
And they include Old Trail Cemetery, Adelaide Cemetery, Marshall View Cemetery, and that's the Veteran Cemetery, Southern Cemetery, Eastern Cemetery and the Fox Hill Cemetery, and Western Cemetery. And some of those cemeteries are divided into sections because of the size of it.
And according to Clark, all cemeteries must be gated, and the department also oversees the upkeep of all gates and railings. For Work in Progress, for Our News, and Megan Shepherd.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as the government of Trinidad wins a $100 million corruption lawsuit. Plus, more than 50 young adults joined the first cohort of the National Youth Guard. We'll tell you what they'll be doing now that it's official. And later, on this day in 1812, the man who founded the Nassau Guardian newspaper was born in London. We'll tell you more about him when our news continues. This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is due to be fingerprinted and photographed in a New York courthouse next week as he becomes the first ex-president to face criminal charges in a case involving a 2016 hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels. His lawyers say no handcuffs and a not guilty plea will be made when Trump surrenders. While Trump and his lawyers prepare for his defense, the prosecutor, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, defended the grand jury investigation despite congressional Republicans painting it all as politically motivated. Trump supporters remaining defiant after the indictment.
The Democrats and the judicial system are doing him wrong. I don't think that, it could happen to me, it could happen to you, it could happen to anybody. And I think it's kind of scary, and people need to wake up and see this.
The U.S. Social Security system's main trust funds reserves will be depleted in 2023, 1 year earlier than estimated last year, while Medicare's finances have improved slightly. Both the Social Security and Medicare trustees' reports on Friday said that the program's finances are unsustainable in the long term, and Biden administration officials urged Congress to adopt his proposal to raise Medicare taxes on wealthy Americans. From South Africa, Oscar Pistorius attended a parole hearing in South Africa on Friday, only for the hearing to be told that he had not yet served the minimum detention period for the murder of his girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp, on Valentine's Day in 2013. David Doyle from our partners at Reuters has more.
It had been thought that the former Paralympic champion, jailed in 2016, was eligible to be considered for early release, having served half his 13-year sentence. But Singabako Ngalo, national spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services, said the court had received a clarification order from the Supreme Court. It stated, he said, that Pistorius had not completed the minimum detention period.
In simple English, half of the sentence is yet to be served.
Ngalo added that Pistorius would have to appear again in 2024 when the minimum term will have been completed.
In news from the region, a Mexican court issued arrest orders Thursday for 6 people over the fire that killed 39 migrants at a detention facility this week in the border city of Ciudad Juarez. According to the federal prosecutor leading the investigation, they include 3 officials from the National Immigration Institute, 2 private security guards contracted by the agency, and the detained migrant accused of starting the fire. She said 5 of the 6 had already been arrested and would face charges of homicide and causing injuries. At least 39 migrants died after apparently starting a fire inside a holding cell at the facility Monday night. More than 24 others were injured. The government of Trinidad and Tobago has won a multi-million-dollar verdict in a sprawling corruption lawsuit that began nearly 20 years ago and involves former high-ranking officials. A Miami jury awarded the government more than $100 million in compensation in a verdict late Wednesday. A civil case began in 2004 when the Trinidadian government sued a former finance minister, various businessmen, and several companies and countries including Florida, Panama, and Portugal. A former Attorney General, Faris Al-Rawi, in Trinidad, who represented the government in the case, told the Associated Press, "We got everything that we asked for." Less than 24 hours after a wanted bulletin had been issued for him over incitement allegations, executive member of the opposition Working People's Alliance in Guyana, Takuma Oganise, on Friday surrendered to police. The police had claimed that the wanted bulletin, or they'd claimed in that wanted bulletin, that is, that on Thursday, the 71-year-old was wanted for several serious offenses, including attempting to excite hostility or ill will on the grounds of race, contrary to Section 3 of the Racial Hostility Act. The statements were reportedly made at a public meeting on March 9th, where he had made several claims about the ruling People's Progressive Party Civic. Still to come in our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was March 31st and the 1980 Act of Parliament that led to the formation of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. Craig is back a little later with your extended weather forecast in 7:30, and also in our news at 7:30, a former Attorney General pushes government to pass the bill on citizenship rights. It's all coming up when our news continues. Time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was March 31st, including the country's first suspected COVID-19 death. On this day in Bahamian history, in 1812, Nassau Guardian newspaper founder Edwin Charles Moseley was born in London. The journalist and newspaper editor came to the Bahamas in 1837 to work as the editor of the Argus. Before coming to the colony, Moseley worked at the Times in London. The Historical Society notes when he arrived in Nassau, Moseley found the paper's anti-emancipation views unpalatable and refused the position. 7 years later, on November 23, 1844, he published the first issue of the Nassau Guardian, which today is the nation's longest-running newspaper. Then in 1963, the 36-foot vessel Violin III was captured on Norman's Key, Exuma, while attempting to refuel. On board the boat were 36 Cubans and 1 American. The Historical Society notes a few months earlier, the Violin III was responsible for a raid on Havana Harbor, where it opened fire on a Soviet tanker before retreating to Florida. When the vessel was captured by British and Bahamian authorities, its crew was detained and its weapons and ammunition confiscated. The crew members were released within 1 day after their Central Intelligence Agency contacts intercepted on their behalf. In 1980, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force came into existence by an act of Parliament. The RBDF is the country's military arm and is charged with defending the territorial integrity of the nation and is mandated to defend the sovereignty of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And finally, on this day in 2022, Our News reported on the country's first suspected COVID-19 death. Health officials reported that Bimini resident Kimberly Johnson Roll, who died at PMH after being airlifted the day before, had recently returned from a trip to Florida. Well, it's a promise kept from the Davis administration's Blueprint for Change. Today, some 64 young cadets ages 18 through 25 made up the first cohort of the National Youth Guard. The graduation ceremony taking place in Grand Bahama this morning following 11 weeks of focused skill building and disaster response training. Prime Minister Philip Davis addressing today's group, who are now equipped to respond to emergencies and disasters by supporting public and private agencies.
Creating a National Youth Guard only made sense. It only made sense to train our young people and equip them with important high-level skills to ensure that the Bahamas is better suited to respond to national emergencies. Can you imagine how many lives could have been saved if we had a National Youth Guard in 2019? I believe that this initiative is among the most important on our roster of goals for this administrative term. Investing in our youth and investing in the safety of our country is of utmost importance.
Now, once deployed, trainees will provide support for government agencies, including the Office of the Prime Minister, the Disaster Reconstruction Authority, and the National Emergency Management Agency, among others. The Prime Minister also congratulating the group.
You 64 young women and men will be the generation that changes the tide for the Bahamas. You are here today. You here today have made a bold and courageous choice to stay at the ready and serve your country when we need you most. You have been trained at the highest standard and carry the mantle of excellence when you represent the National Youth Guard.
All right, and congratulations goes out to them all. To watch their story again and for all of today's top stories, you can visit ournews.bs. That's going to do it for us in News at 7. Joining us now is Italia Hall. She's got the latest headlines. Italia?
Yes, Ken, thanks so much. Well, a lockup escapee is sentenced, and we're still following the story about the local organizing committee chief who's defending the figure he provided for the 50th Carifta Games. Here are your latest headlines. Pass the bill. New tonight on Our News Live at 7:30. A former attorney general charges government to take action on citizenship equality. And the man who escaped a lockup at the magistrate court complex is sentenced. And the CEO of the local organizing committee is standing by the multi-million-dollar figure to prepare for the Carifta Games. And later, a story of surviving colon cancer and why you should get screened early. Our News Live at 7:30 starts in a moment.
Oh, it's your thing. Do what you want to do. It's your thing. Do what you want to do. Oh, it's your thing. Do what you want to do.
Shareholders are very happy.
Oh, it's your thing. Do what you want to do.
Welcome to our news and thank you for joining us. I'm Natalia Hall. Pass the bill. That's the charge from former Attorney General Allison Maynard Gibson, who says the bill is drafted to address the ongoing citizenship battle. She says there needs to be a greater push to get it done. Bertha McDermott has her comments in this report.
To me, it's a no-brainer. Get it done.
Amid the ongoing debate over the right to pass on citizenship, former Attorney General Allison Maynard Gibson says there needs to be a greater push not just by the government but from the electorate. She referenced the women's suffrage movement as a catalyst.
So Stafford Sands said that women would vote over his dead body. They came together, all women and men also. They worked from bottom up. They galvanized the support. They got it done. If we as citizens want this, we will get it done. And politicians respond to the needs of their constituents. Otherwise, they know what will happen. The vote is a very powerful thing. Don't underestimate it.
This week, Chief Justice Sir Ian Winder warned that requiring individuals born in the Bahamas to foreign parents who are Bahamians in waiting to live on the outside of their own society is a recipe for social discontent. The immigration minister just a few days later said the process cannot be rushed, noting there have been instances of fraud. Then there's the fact that Bahamian women cannot pass citizenship on to their children if the father is a non-Bahamian. But Maynard Gibson says the groundwork has already been laid.
There's already a bill drafted that gives women the right to pass their citizenship onto their spouses and the citizenship onto their children, and single Bahamian men also to pass their citizenship onto their children under certain circumstances.
But as the debate drags on and the piece of legislation is shelved, the former AG says many are going through hardship.
Today, while people are wringing their hands and worrying about what will happen, there are women who are suffering. There are children who are suffering, and there are men who are suffering. And it is the job of our legislators to eliminate, not cause suffering. Pass the bill.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Bertha McDermott.
Thanks, Berthany. Well, a man who escaped from the lockup at the Magistrates Court complex last September was sentenced today to 14 months in prison. Since London Ramming has already spent 6 months in custody, he has 8 months remaining on his sentence. 25-year-old Ramming sparked an island-wide manhunt on September 23, 2022, after he walked out of the cells at the court complex. Now, earlier that day, Ramming had been sentenced to 15 months in prison for violating the condition of his attempted murder bail by cutting off his ankle monitor. Officers at the cell block did not realize that Ramming was missing until they were loading detainees onto the bus to take them to the prison. Following a manhunt, police arrested Ramming at Hampton Street on September 25th. Ramming changed his plea to guilty in relation to the escape. On February 8th, Ramming later had his conviction and 15-month sentence for the bail breach squashed on appeal. Well, a man was gunned down while riding a moped last night, and police were alerted to the deadly crime by shot spotter technology. The victim was driving a moped west on St. Bart's Road when the occupants of a small dark-colored car pulled up and shot him multiple times. Press Liaison Officer Chief Superintendent Christine Skipping speaking to reporters on the scene.
And we are appealing to members of the community, especially those persons who reside in this area. Persons who may have been traversing the Carmichael Road area, who may have seen a small dark-colored vehicle leave this area at a high rate of speed. We are asking you to kindly reach out to the officers of the Criminal Investigations Department.
Officer in charge of the Carmichael Road Police Station, Chief Superintendent Mark Barrett, speaking on initiatives to clamp down on crime, adding that it will not be tolerated.
We, as officers, will converge on respective communities, particularly within the Carmichael Division, and again, we address the concerns of the residents because we know that the concerns varies.
A 19-year-old resident is in hospital after being shot in the leg. The incident unfolding around 9:15 Thursday night as the victim was standing at the front of a relative's home on Augusta Street when he heard a loud noise and immediately felt a burning sensation in his thigh. That is when he realized he had been shot. The teenage victim was transported to PMH in a private vehicle. Police are on the hunt for a suspect. And police need your help finding 4 suspects they believe are behind 2 separate armed robberies that happened minutes apart last night. Around 11:15 on Thursday, the victim was parked in his car at the front of an Elizabeth Estates home when he was approached by two men dressed in dark clothing. One of the men pulled out a handgun and robbed the victim of his white Honda Fit. In the second armed robbery, a woman and her boyfriend were parked in front of a bank on University Drive around 12 a.m. when two gunmen approached the couple and robbed them of her black Nissan Dualis. The suspects in both incidents escaped, and police are asking anyone with information to contact them at telephone numbers 911, 919, or Crime Stoppers at 328-TIPS. Beautiful conditions outside the Our News studios as we welcome the weekend. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center live with a look at our current conditions. Good evening, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. Well, we are welcoming the weekend and we're saying goodbye to March because this is the last day of March, moving into April.
All right.
And of course, April showers are around the corner. 77 degrees outside our studios right now, partly cloudy skies. It's breezy. The winds are out of the east at 16 miles per hour. Your feels like temperature is hanging around in the mid-70s. Satellite view. Rigidified pressure dominating our weather. That's going to continue to dominate our weather through tomorrow. Front boundary near the southeast Bahamas really falling apart. A couple of spotty showers expected, but that high is going to stay with us through Sunday before we see a frontal boundary get near and wash out. That's your first quick check on weather. Stick with us. A look at your extended forecast. Still to come.
Still to come on Our News, it's all in the numbers for the organizers of the upcoming Carifta Games, defending the hefty price tag to get game ready, plus putting gender equality in the spotlight with the power of collaboration. And later, we get inside the mind of the creative who helped to craft the designs, leading us to the 50th Independence celebrations. That's all coming up when Our News returns. The Chief Executive Officer of the local organizing committee is defending his numbers after the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture said his figures was millions of numbers off the actual spending for Carifta. Our Marlena Leonard has the story.
Chief Executive Officer of the local organizing committee for the 50th Carifta Games, Lyndon Maycock, is standing by the numbers he gave at the weekly press briefing held at the office of the Prime Minister on Thursday.
Cash disbursement to date was correct with what the minister would have noted, but my numbers represented what would be the end results with respect to what would happen for the World Relays. It was beyond, and I said that. I said it was Carifta, Bahama Games, and for World Relays.
An official from the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture told a local daily that Maycock's statement about $9 million being spent for Carifta prep was incorrect, and that $839,000 was the accurate figure. But Maycock says
$2.5 million in capital works for the Carifta Games would have happened under in terms of stadium preparation. Then we talked about our operations. Our operations were 3.5, pretty much $1 million for operation to ensure that the games are effectively managed.
The ministry official said there may have been confusion around the expenditures associated with the maintenance of the stadium and the preparations for the Carifta Games, Bahamas Games, and World Relays.
The minister's correct. I am correct. And so the numbers are, I mean, any accountant will understand. Our numbers are posted to our website. If you have any questions, any concerns about our numbers, they are posted to our website. And so please, they're all for everyone to understand. I'm very plain speaking in terms of my numbers, and I stand by my numbers.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
All right, thanks, Marlena. Well, women from all walks of life coming together to lend their voices to advancing gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls in the Bahamas. That was also the theme of the kickoff workshop by the Inter-American Development Bank. Inter-American Development Bank Country Representative Danielle Carrera-McQueen says, in order for anything to be achieved, there must be a collective effort.
Women's political equality may be needed in order to achieve the equality in any other domain. I believe we have to work both fronts in parallel in order to get what we deserve as half of the population. So gender equality matters because it's a basic human right, and the mechanism through which men and women live freely and contribute meaningful societies.
Now, the workshop saw speakers from different arenas like U.S. Chargé d'Affaires Usha Pitts and keynote speaker, former Attorney General Allison Maynard Gibson.
Anybody can produce a report or some strategy paper that says we care about gender equality, but until you get your body here, you don't really care about gender equality.
The gender-based violence bill. In 2015, a distinguished committee of experts, yes, that's almost 10 years ago, produced a draft bill. Now, in the Caribbean, we talk about paper staying still and you can write anything on it. When are we going to act? It's almost 10 years later.
Cable Bahamas Business Solutions expanding their services. The Business Solutions Department now has partnered with Access Accelerator Small Business Development Center. Head of the SME and Family Islands Innovation Unit, Chantel Sand, says they find the opportunity very exciting, while Director of B2B Sales and Innovations, Delmaro Duncombe, says small businesses are the backbone of any economy.
As the SBDC continue to roll out various initiatives, we will play a closer role in doing more training, doing more assistance, and helping them understand some of these technologies, particularly some of the more innovative solutions that are coming out in the market globally, so that companies here can leverage that innovation.
Corporate Communications Manager at the SBDC, Michael Munning, says the goal is to equip entrepreneurs with the necessary tools.
We have been able to assist about 2,000 clients over the past 4.5 years to the tune of some $74+ million in funding throughout 15 islands of the Bahamas. So this partnership with Cable Bahamas Business Solutions was really a no-brainer for us. It's allowing us to now expand our network, broaden our reach, and be able to provide support to these entrepreneurs in a more meaningful and impactful way.
When Our News comes back from the break, words of advice from a colon cancer survivor who seemed to battle it all.
The Bahamas Carifta track and field team's pep rally featured 2 special guests yesterday, and the 2023 Major League Baseball season began yesterday for Jazz Chisholm and Antoine Richardson. I'll be back in a few with our sports.
Plus, Greg is back in the Weather Center with your weekend weather planner. Stay with us. This is Our News. Welcome back. If you're wondering who did all the graphics for the 49th Independence celebrations, we have the answer. Our Sasha Lightborn spoke to the creative behind the images. Let's take a look.
I'm sure you've seen some of these. Since 2022, I was intrigued by some of the imagery behind the 49th Independence celebrations. So much so that I made inquiries about who was creating the unique designs. Fast forward to 2023, heading into our 50th year of independence, I was finally able to catch up with Dakota Marshall, the creative behind last year's designs and one of the people creating a lot of the beautiful work you see today. And get this, she's self-taught.
I'm an avid reader, and I had a couple of friends back in the day that were like into websites and a little graphic design here and there, and also my older brother. He was kind of into graphic design a little bit, so it sparked an interest. I just started playing around with it, downloaded a bootleg version of Photoshop, and I just read from there.
Marshall shared how she got the job to create graphics for last year's and this year's Independence celebrations.
Referrals, like from one client to the next, like just clients just pass my contacts along, and eventually I think I may have been referred to Diasante at some point, and then it just started from there.
She also shares what was her inspiration.
I didn't want the visuals to be, let's say, extremely old school, but I didn't want it to be too over the top that it didn't reach the entire demographic, like everybody could appreciate it. So I kept it modern but simple, and I didn't know how the logo would come across, but once I sent the drafts, like people were like, okay, I love this one, this has to be it.
Now we'll have more from Marshall and her designs coming up in Our News next week. Reporting for Our News, I'm Sasha Lightborn.
Today's sports update is sponsored by Corona, distributed in the Bahamas by Jimmy's Wines and Spirits.
Yesterday's Carifta Pep Rally featured a couple of special appearances and baseball beginnings for a couple of Bahamians. Tej Adderley joins us now live in studio with a check on sports. Tej?
Hi, Italia. Happy Friday and welcome to Our Sports. The Bahamas Carifta track and field team is ready for the 2023 games. Two special guest speakers showed up at yesterday's Pep Rally to hype our athletes up. Here's Megan Shepard with more.
They are known as the Gold Team, or the G Team for short. The 80-member team that will be representing Team Bahamas at the 50th Carifta Games getting a pep talk last night at the Cultural Village on the eastern side of the National Stadium. Prime Minister Philip Davis and Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture Mario Boleg addressing the team.
I cannot wait to see you all excel, be it on the track or the field. So G-Team, it'll all be golden.
Accountability, faith without work is dead. We know you have put in the efforts and all of the dedication time that you need to make sure that you go there and do your best. We know that you will do your best, and I am very proud of each and every one of you.
And the stars of the evening, the athletes. These team members say they are anxious but confident, and they are particularly happy that the games will be held here at home.
I'm excited to see my family members cheer me on in the crowd, and this is going to be a very great Carifta game.
After the pep talk, I feel pretty great actually. I feel up and ready to go. This is my second national team, so I know I can go there and do my best. Last year, I got injured, so this year I just trying to stay healthy and go there and bring 2 goals for my country. I feel like it's the hometown advantage. I feel like we'll be used to all the areas we're running in, all the areas we're doing in, and we just like the support that we get from Bahamas on a daily basis, the track and field. And as a thrower, I'm looking to have some more support for our events.
The Carifta Games are slated for the Easter weekend, beginning with the opening ceremonies on April 7th. Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepard.
Thank you, Megan. That looked like a lot of fun. Major League Baseball's 2023 season began yesterday for Marlins center fielder Jazz Chisholm and San Francisco Giants first base coach Anton Richardson. In his first start in center field, Jazz went 0 for 4 at the plate with 2 strikeouts as the Marlins lost to the New York Mets 5-3. Richardson's Giants lost to his former team, the New York Yankees, who held them to only 4 hits while striking out 16 hitters. Jazz and the Marlins should be playing right now, and the Giants will take another crack at the Yankees on Saturday afternoon. And that was your look at sports. I'm Tage Adderley. Have a great weekend. Back to you, Italia.
Still ahead on our news tonight, a colon cancer survivor shares his story after being 20 years cancer-free. Plus, do you have big plans for the weekend? Well, Greg is back with your extended forecast right after this quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back to our news. Will breezy conditions continue into the weekend? Greg is back in the Weather Center with a look ahead. Greg?
Yeah, thanks again, Natalia. Welcome back, everybody. We are going to see the breeze continue through tomorrow, and that's the we're going to end March. April is going to start off with a couple of showers, possibly by Sunday as another frontal boundary gets in here. But the one that's down there, the southeast Bahamas, that's falling apart. That high-pressure ridge will continue to dominate our weather through tomorrow. The winds are up to 15 to 25 knots today, but they will fall off 15 to 20 tomorrow. So hazardous boating and beaching conditions will continue through the weekend. Future forecast showing just some isolated showers across the area that will continue through Saturday, and then by Sunday we expect the frontal boundary to approach us, and that should get near the northern Bahamas and quickly exit the area. And of course, high pressure will build back across our area for next week. For all areas, if you're doing any boating or beaching for the weekend, just exercise some caution out there. An advisory posted for the boaters. Rip current risk will remain high. East to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots. They will be gusting at times. Sea is going to be 4 to 6 feet in sheltered areas, 8 feet up to, well, in northeasterly swells, mainly along Atlantic exposed shorelines. Your low tide will be at 11:04 tonight. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your extended forecast, we will continue to enjoy some rather nice weather. As I mentioned, the front getting in here sometime Sunday, but partly cloudy skies will continue. Some showers may hang over for early next week, but breezy conditions once again, and those temperatures, they're going to approach the summer-like values for the next several days. That's a look at our weather. Have a safe weekend, everybody. Natalia.
All right, thanks so much, Greg. And as we wrap up our Colon Cancer Awareness Month series tonight, our Jamila Mizik has a one-on-one with a survivor.
August 19th will make Greg Bullard 20 years cancer-free. Bullard says before his diagnosis, he experienced 2 years of non-stop stomach pain.
It was not until I became critically ill here in Grand Bahama that I did a scan, ultrasound scan, and then it demanded that they did exploratory surgery, and upon completion of the surgery, it was discovered that I did have third-stage colon cancer.
He says after 2 surgeries and 6 months worth of chemotherapy, he was eventually cancer-free.
But immediately after the surgery in 2003, my hemoglobin went back up to 12, 13, 14, and eventually 15, and I felt a whole lot stronger.
But apart from his lifestyle changes, Bullard says he owes it all to God.
I give God glory for preserving my life and healing me of cancer.
Today, he's encouraging early cancer screening.
I don't think that I had to suffer as long as I did if I had done the pre-cancer screening. All adults 45 years or older, you should do a colonoscopy every 5 years. If there's a history of colon cancer in the family, then it should be done probably even more frequently.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Missick.
All right, such an inspiring story. Thanks for that, Jamila, and thank you for joining us for Our News tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a beautiful evening.